You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path and how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical, tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 956. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I hope your day is going amazing. We are here 4 times a week helping you to be able to start, grow, and scale your private practice. We cover all those things that we just never learned in grad school. I know for myself, I learned a lot about nonprofits. I learned a lot about kind of managing nonprofits and managing, how do you work at community mental health. I got a lot on the technical and clinical side of mental health issues, all those things that we'd want a good therapist to have. But just how do you get clients? What do you do once they come through the door? How do you look at sliding scales? What if there's clients that, you don't take their insurance? What do you do? These are all questions that when I had my private practice before I sold that in 2019, I just had to navigate and guess and just say, this feels ethical. And then maybe try some things. And then it's like, well, I guess I don't really like how that played out. I guess I'll change it. But today, that's why I'm so excited to have Paul Fugle here. I've known Paul for years. He was one of the early podcast guests when I first started the show. Paul reached out and he was visiting Traverse City and we got to meet up in person. And I'm so glad to have him back on the show. Paul's worked in the mental health field since 1996 with a focus on projects committed to improving mental health services for lower income individuals and families. Before beginning his own private psychotherapy practice, he spent 5 years as a counselor and supervisor in New York at a community-based agency designed to implement procedural reform throughout the juvenile justice system in New York City. A graduate of Naropa University Contemplative Psychotherapy Program, Paul operates Open Path Psychotherapy Collective and resides in Asheville, North Carolina. Paul, welcome back to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks, Joe. It's nice to be here. I can't believe this is episode 956.
I know it's been a long journey. We're quickly approaching episode 1000. It's just insane. Well, it definitely helped when we started doing 2 episodes a week, then 3, then 4. That definitely speeds it up for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Well, Paul, let's start with, for those that haven't heard of Open Path, would love for you to just talk a little bit about just kind of what it is, big picture. We can get into some of the finer details, but would love to start about what is Open Path. And then I want to hear a little bit about your story after that of starting Open Path and kind of why that was important to you.
Yeah, sure. So Open Path is a nationwide collective of therapists who are in private practice. When I say nationwide, I mean in the United States, but also we have many therapists in Canada. And they're therapists who decided to join our collective because they wanted to be a part of a movement to help create even just a ripple effect in the problems that many people face in finding affordable mental health care. So the way it works is that therapists sign up. There's no cost at all to sign up, and they put a profile on our site. And then we are essentially a referral agency sending people, clients who are looking for lower fee therapy. So when I say lower fee, it's between $40 and $70 a session. That's a rate that the client negotiates with the therapist. We do have spots for student interns at $30 a session. And the client pays a one-time lifetime membership fee of $65. And that's how we get enough money to sort of exist as a nonprofit organization.
Wow. So take us back to, what were you doing in life when you had Open Path as an idea? And then kind of what was the original story of launching Open Path Collective?
Sure. Well, I'll say before I go back in time that we have 25,000 therapists around the country who are in our network. And if you had told me 11 years ago when I was thinking up this idea that we'd eventually have 25,000 therapists, my jaw probably would have hit the floor. So I feel filled with immense gratitude that it's been a successful program. We've connected about 120,000 clients to affordable care. In fact, I think we hit 120,000 last month. So I feel very, very grateful that it's been an effective program that's helped a lot of people, and very grateful to the therapists who have made this all happen. So
Wow.
back in 2012, when I was kicking this idea around, I was in private practice. I'd been in private practice for a few years at that point. And this thing would happen that's happened to a lot of us, where my phone would ring and a client would say, "Hey, I need therapy, but I can only afford $40 a session." And if I had a sliding scale spot open, I would take on that client. But if I didn't, which was usually the case, I'd have to tell them I couldn't take them on, and they'd say, "Okay, well, where can I find someone who can see me for $40?" And I'd have to say, "I don't know. I don't think that place exists to find that out. So you're just going to have to keep calling more people." This felt like a ridiculous thing to suggest to people. It's not a very dignified thing to ask people to do, and it felt like, oh gosh, there's got to be a better solution. So I combed the internet looking for the solution, and it wasn't there. And that got my wheels turning, and started thinking about, well, with the internet, we can use the website as the waiting room, and we can be the waiting room, and we can receive clients coming to us. And this is long before online therapy was really happening. And then we can send people to their private offices, which is how the idea found its roots.
Mm. Now, early on, I mean, the scope of the project that like now you're like, oh my gosh, this is so big. Early on, how did it start with OpenPath to just like what were some of the first steps that you took in the first couple years?
Well, I needed to raise money from the outset. I figured I would need about $20,000 to get it going, and I didn't have any money, and I don't come from money. I don't know people with money, so I did like a GoFundMe, which was brand new back then as well, and I squeezed $7,000 from friends on Facebook in sort of this very humbling way of asking people for money, and I only got 7,000, and then a friend's family's foundation threw in 10,000. So with $17,000, there was enough to build a website, barely, and we got the website up, and then just started talking up the idea to therapists, and therapists liked the idea. This was before therapists were really being besieged by all these therapy companies asking for their attention. I guess we were one of the first people doing this sort of thing. So they liked the idea. They liked that we were a nonprofit organization, and therapists started signing up, and they started signing up quickly. And we had a lot of therapists. And the first few years, I was like, oh, the first year, I was like, this is bound to be a huge success because I have all these therapists, and they're offering such affordable rates. Well, I really knew nothing about building a business and knew nothing about marketing, and realized that word of mouth would not do it. And I realized that I had to learn very quickly about marketing. So after a few years of a lot of toil, we figured out more and more strategies to get the word out about what we were doing. And then slowly but surely, the idea caught on.
Wow. So I know that a while back you and I were chatting about how like Google, like you got Google's attention and you were going after some Google grants. Will you talk a little bit about that being something that kind of sped things up for you, or what that was and what it looked like?
Yeah, you have a good memory, Joe. Um, uh, I mean, I think that we probably talked in 2016, maybe, right? Or 2017. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, yeah, it was
yeah.
a while ago. Yeah.
So Google has these grants where they will give nonprofits AdWords money. So AdWords are the little ads that you see when you do a Google search at the top of the page, and uh, they will give you $10,000 a month. And back then they had a program where they were giving $40,000 a month. So they're not handing you cash; it's an in-kind donation, but they're handing you credits essentially. Where every time someone clicks on your ad, they remove a little bit of your credit, and you have this allowance per month. And that was a huge boon for us to help us find clients in the early days. We got the $40,000 grant, and a lot of clients were finding us that way. Unfortunately, Google they still offer this grant. They only offer the $10,000 one, as far as I know. But they also, back in 2018 or so, they changed their requirements uh, uh, for how to utilize the grant, which was essentially privileging their paid customers. So, we're
Mm.
going up against these huge health tech companies that have, presumably millions to spend a year in marketing, and our ads now can't. they don't compete with theirs, so they're not as effective as they once were.
Yeah. Yeah, we often get approached by some of those big tech companies that want to advertise on the podcast, and yeah, it's just not been something we've jumped into yet.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um, so then now when you look at OpenPath, what are the challenges you're seeing in the market? What are the things that you're seeing as opportunities? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because as a nonprofit organization, I don't think too much about competitors in that sense. Like we're not some corporate uh, uh, office that's beholden to our shareholders. So I don't think too much about competition. But in reality, these big health tech corps are our competition, and we're a nonprofit organization. We can't begin to compete with them in terms of marketing dollars. So we sort of see ourselves as a little engine that could, and we have been able to chug up that mountain very successfully, doing our own way of sort of grassroots uh, approach to doing this work. We always have to make sure that we have a pretty good balance of available therapists in the network and clients who are walking through the doors looking for therapists. And at the outset of the pandemic, we did have a good balance. And then when the pandemic started, we our client numbers shot through the roof in 2020 and 2021, and suddenly our therapist numbers started to plummet, and that
Mm.
scared us a little bit. And we went on a big push to find more therapists, and luckily we were successful. Got a lot of therapists in the door, and now we're in a place where it's sort of flipped around on us, and we have a ton of therapists who are waiting to see clients, and we'd like to connect more clients with them. So right now, in terms of challenges, we're doing our best to get the word out there about what we're doing to people who can really use our services.
Mm. It's so interesting because it feels like in most parts of the nation, I hear people say, "Oh, there's just not good therapists that have openings." It's great to know that OpenPath that you have therapists ready to take sliding
Yeah,
scale or reduced rate people. That's amazing. On
yeah.
average, and you may not have this stat, but the average therapist that's on the platform, how many spots are they opening up for people at the lower rate?
It sort of depends on the therapist. A lot of times our therapists are newer in the field, and they'd rather see one of our clients at a lower rate than no client at all. So while we ask therapists to take on really a minimum of one client, that's it. That's all we ask is for them to take on one client. Some will take on 4, 5, 6, 7 clients of ours. And what we don't want is for therapists to get burned out on lower fee clients. So we try to make sure that therapists know about this, and that therapists are doing what they're doing consciously and choosing the amount of open path clients they take consciously. But no, I don't
Mm,
have the information. It's probably anywhere from 2 to 9 or 1 to 9.
okay. Well, no, and I think that, similar to when people sign up for an EAP and take a lower rate when they're getting started, they're like, they just want to get in those reps of doing counseling and getting out there and helping people. And I think it's great that people, even if they are beyond the point that they're new, that they're choosing to say, I want to have a handful of clients that are at that reduced rate. I know for myself, I always kept my contract with the state of Michigan where I got $53 a session per kid in foster care. Um,
Uh,
and I had, I think, a limit of up to 5 kids at a time that I would see.
right.
But it's like there were so few male therapists that also had like specialized training in helping, teenagers that are really angry. That was just something that I ethically, felt like I wanted to do with my practice. Or there's other nonprofits in town that could refer directly for a reduced rate. And
Yeah.
finding for yourself in your business how that works, I think is a really good way to stay connected beyond just maybe what your typical client is. Um, when you think about the client experience, walk us through a little bit what, if someone here, maybe their sliding fee spots are full, maybe they're on OpenPath and they're full there. And they have a client that calls them and they, send them, to the platform. What's the typical experience for the client at that point?
Yeah, so we try to make it as easy as possible for the clients, where the client will go to our website, and like most of the platforms, they'll put their zip code in, and a range of therapists will come up. Well, I shouldn't say most of the platforms. Many platforms today, you can't actually select your own therapists. Or you can't see the whole lineup of therapists. You tell people what you're interested in, what your issues are, and then you're recommended. Ours follows more of a Psychology Today model. where they put their zip code in. They see all the available therapists in that area and also in the state if they want to work online. They click on the therapist profile, and if they choose to work with a therapist, there's a join button. They fill out a really brief application, and on the application, we just ask for their basic information, why they're coming, their name and address. That we also ask for their basic financial information, just to make sure that they actually are in need of affordable care. And then the moment they hit submit, they're asked to pay the $65 fee. And again, that's a lifetime membership fee. And after we get that, then an email is sent to the therapist and to the client, and it invites them to connect and begin the therapeutic relationship. At that point, we back away completely. We don't see any point in being some sort of overarching figure that is watching over the relationship. So we back out at that point, and then unless there's a problem, and there rarely is, we're out of the equation forever.
Mm.
And I should also say, with that $65 membership fee, that when I started it, a lot of people who were really business minded and business oriented told me that I was crazy and that it would never work with a one-time fee, that there had to be some sort of membership fee. And I just was like, well, I'm going to try this and see if it works. And it does. I mean, again, we're not making tens of millions of dollars the way some of these other companies are, because we're not trying to squeeze every last cent out of the client that we can. But for us, it works.
Mm. Yeah. Talk a little bit more about your funding model. So people pay the $65. How else is it supported in regards to keeping the platform going? I'm sure you have to have staff and IT and all that. Like, is it mostly grants and donations, or like, how's it keep going?
Yeah, so we have about 10, or I think right now we have 8 or 9 full-time staff members and a few part-time staff members, and then IT is a big cost, as you might imagine. So we have a few other sideline programs that we do. We have a mental health education program that we do for people who are in the court system and need to take classes like anger management or parenting, and that brings in some money. We have a directory service for therapists that's for full fee and insurance-based clients, and that brings in some money. And we don't really do any grants or fundraising, although we might do that in the future. Right now, there's a donate button on our page, and we do receive a few $1,000s a year total in donations. But it's mostly through those 3 different initiatives that we have that we're bringing in enough money to make the program work.
Wow. Going in network with insurance can be tough. I know when I took insurance, there were long wait times and it was so confusing. Filing all the right paperwork is time consuming and tedious. And even after you're done, it can take months to get credentialed and start seeing clients. That's why Alma makes it easy and financially rewarding to accept insurance. When you join their insurance program, you can get credentialed within 45 days and access enhanced reimbursement rates with major payers. They also handle all of the paperwork from eligibility checks to claims submissions and guarantee payment within 2 weeks of each appointment. Once you've joined Alma's insurance program, you can see clients in your state of licensure, regardless of where you're working from. It's amazing to know that you can be fully online. Learn more about building a thriving practice with Alma at helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to get started. I'd love to kind of zoom out from OpenPath and just maybe talk big picture about mental health trends, serving that many clients, seeing what people are looking for, having that many therapists on your platform. I'm sure there's things that you notice, we're towards the beginning of this year. What are you seeing in regards to mental health trends? What's concerning you about society or mental health? Like, just I think that's where I'm gonna leave the question. Like, what's concerning you, or what is getting your attention around mental health issues?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. So I'm a therapist. I don't know if that's been said, but I'm a therapist, and I have a small private practice, and I'm still in a supervisor group that I've been in for 14 years now. And being a good therapist is something that's important to me. And when I say a good therapist, I mean being a skilled therapist is something that's still important to me and that I work hard at. And I have a bit of orthodoxy when it comes to therapy. I feel like in many, many cases, it's a model that was tried and tested by many smart people, and that it actually works pretty well. I get a little bit skeptical of people coming in and feeling like, oh, this model is completely malleable and can be worked according to my own preferences or a client's preferences.
Mm,
I think in many cases, we're standing on the shoulders of people who worked really hard at creating this form, and it's a form that I think is not perfect. I think it has flaws in it, but I think it's really an exquisite form that really works. And I see quite a bit of people feeling like they can pick and choose what aspects of the form that they want and what they don't want. And I think in the process, the therapeutic treatment gets watered down, and I think it does a disservice to clients. Now, I don't think this happens across the board, and I think it's very exceptional that people are doing it. I think for the most part, people do respect the form and are sticking with it. But certainly, I see that. Of course, there's a whole thing about mental health. Clinicians giving advice, mental health advice online, on TikTok and these sorts
mm,
of things. And of course, that's concerning as well. But I think that every energy has its shadow element, but then also an element of wisdom to it. And I think probably both are at play. And it's my hope that people, that therapists across the board are working as hard as they can to be as conscious as possible about what's happening, so that they're not so they don't end up doing harm.
hmm Yeah. Now, when you say orthodoxy around therapy, what are some key elements from your point of view that you really hold dear, that you think that these are things that we're standing on the shoulders of people before us that maybe shouldn't be messed with too much, or at least you see a lot of value in being a part of the structure of counseling?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be careful here because everyone has their own approach, and I don't want to be disrespectful of anyone's. And my this answer is really, really coming from my own perspective, based on my own
Yeah.
approach, what works with me, and what has worked with me. I mean, I believe in the transferential aspect of relationship. I saw somewhere on Twitter last week where someone was saying that a transference has been recognized in the relationship, so the therapist could no longer work with the client. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Transference is
Mm,
like this fundamental tool that's a gift to us, that if we learn how to recognize it and then learn how to work with it skillfully, it can be so helpful for the client.
mm,
Um, so, I mean, I really believe strongly in the transferential relationship. I believe in the unconscious and the role that the unconscious is playing at all times, and what a powerful agent the unconscious is, and how much it can really help people if they learn how to work skillfully with the unconscious. Uh, um, so, I would say those are the two things that come up first for me
yeah.
in that answer.
Well, I think that so often therapy is both art and science, that there's this figuring out what works for us while still also looking at what has worked and been researched or has been used by other people. And so I'm glad that you kind of paused the question and kind of said, well, this is my own point of view. I want to be respectful to other people. And while also saying there are ways that people are bending what therapy is in a way that doesn't seem to look at or respect, past research or things that have happened. So I, I appreciate the nuance that you gave to that answer.
Sure. And if you want a concrete example, would that be helpful?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
I would say that, because I do believe in the transferential component of the relationship. One thing that I try to work with my clients is that we have as little contact as possible in between sessions. This to me just makes the most sense. The more contact there is, the more it dilutes what's happening in the therapeutic hour, and the less effective the treatment will be as a result. But now there's all sorts of companies that are encouraging people to message with their therapist in between sessions, and that's the sort of thing that I'm not sure if the people who are proponents of this are really keeping in mind the importance of the therapeutic relationship and how this form was created and why it was created, or if they're trying really hard to figure out what is most palatable to clients and what's going to be the biggest money generator. So
Hmm.
those are things that sort of get my antennae up and make me feel a little bit skeptical about certain trends.
Yeah, and I think then you also start to look at automated AI bots and that sort of thing. And I mean, there's so many things to think through. Well, I love how you said that there's wisdom and shadow sides to all these things, and to say, well, sure, like access, especially in rural communities where maybe there aren't as many therapists or interventions between sessions. Like,
Uh,
could an AI bot help in that situation? I don't know. that has yet to be seen. And so, all that technology and knowing kind of the motives and stuff, we're wading through things that no other generation of therapists has had to think through.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think the whole AI thing is going to be very fascinating because
Yeah.
I could foresee some sort of situation where AI bots are probably more skilled at doing actual therapy than many therapists are because therapists haven't gotten enough training, and these AI bots have access to all of the training ever. Um, so I don't know that that's possible now, and I'm not a big proponent of AI as working as therapists, but it will be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you think about open path and future planning, one thing that I love asking people that have had businesses for a while or have had nonprofits for a while, is just like how you think about future goals, how you think about the impact you want to make beyond what you're doing, because oftentimes we kind of accidentally are successful. So by that I mean that a lot of people maybe are doing a counseling practice. They're like, I guess I'll add another person, and they aren't saying I want to build a 7-figure practice. It just like they do the right thing over and over, and it just keeps growing. And it's not necessarily a super like I'm intentional that I need to hit this goal.
Mhm.
And so I love hearing people, especially when you say 25,000 therapists, and 10 years ago or so, your mind would have been blown if you knew that's where you were headed. When you think about the future of open path, how you think about your time with it and the direction, and just helping impact people, like what are you thinking about? How are you conceptualizing it? When do you say enough is enough, we're gonna like keep going at this pace and not look to grow? Like how do you sort through all that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Operating in the rubric of capitalism, we've had to have our eye on this constantly because we're a nonprofit organization, but we are being funded by through a capitalist model. In other words, through the money that we're making. And I, I have issues with capitalism, but I also don't see it as a black and white thing that it's either good or bad. What I recognize is that capitalism is a very, very powerful, very, very seductive force in our experiences right now and how we live our lives. And what we have to do with Open Path is be very, very conscious of this force because we actually don't want to fall sway to it. And that can happen very easily. And what that means is that, if our numbers aren't growing month over month, it means something is wrong and that we need to, and that this needs to be remedied right away. Uh, we definitely want to keep growing. We feel like we have this thing. We have a lot of therapists, and we want to be able to connect them with clients because we feel like this is a work that's doing good out in the culture. But we have to be really really careful that we don't fall sway into this thing where it's like this growth mentality that all we have to do and all we can do is keep looking towards growth, growth, growth. I think what we try to do is look at what we have in front of us, look at what the field is ahead of us, and then try to respond to that in a way that is as conscious and thoughtful as possible. Sometimes that does entail growth, and other times it entails just staying put and taking deep breaths where we are.
Hmm. So how do you, and I love what you just said, how do you enact that practically with a team, to look at where you're at and then decide what next steps you're going to take as a team?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it a lot. We talk about it, and we have lots of transparent conversations. Yesterday, I met with our team. Like I said earlier, we're in this place where we're ready to try to get more clients, and we're trying to figure out how to do this. And it was reflected to me that I was putting a bit of pressure on the staff, and I had to think about that, and I did. And then we had a meeting yesterday with some of our staff members, and I said, when I was growing up, like if money was tight in my family, we pushed. Like that was what happened. Things got really intense, and there was a lot of pushing. There was a lot of foot on the accelerator, and it was sort of done with tension. And and I told them that that's not actually the way that I want to run this business. That was being
Mm,
unconscious, and that it was my intention to recognize that what we have is something that's very, very, it's a helpful agent in the culture. And we've built something. We have a lot of therapists who are waiting to help. So let's use that to be sort of the skateboard that we ride on instead of having tension be the propeller.
mm. I think that's great that you kind of look at your own kind of self, your own story as to like why you reacted that way. And the outcome may be the same. We want to get more clients to get help, but then if the staff knows that it's not just us hitting some numbers, but it's just helping people, or the reframing of it, I think that's wonderful. The last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want him to know?
Well, this Zen saying in my mind that goes first thought, best thought. I try to use that as often as I can, where the first thought that comes into my head is the thought that I work with instead of trying to edit it to find the right answer.
Mm,
So the first thought that came into my head just now was, uh, and I think most therapists know this already, so I'm preaching to the choir here, is that it is such a tremendous gift to be a therapist. And it's such a privilege to be able to sit with somebody and develop a relationship that's based on trust and transparency, where the person that we're sitting with feels free or freer to share the contents of their psyche with us. The most troubling contents and also the contents that most fill them with elation and joy of being alive. The fact that we have this form that really doesn't exist anywhere else in any other relationship in our culture, and that we get to sit with people and experience a relationship like this, to me is such an enormous privilege. It's such a wonderful thing. And so when you ask that question, I guess the first thing that popped into my mind is, and this is really more a message for myself than it is for others, is, oh, I don't want to take this for granted. I don't want to
mm,
take how special this is for granted, because I think it's enormously special.
mm. That's so awesome. If people want to refer clients to OpenPath, if they want to apply to be on the platform, what steps should they take?
Yeah, so the URL is openpathcollective.org. It's openpathcollective.org. And then from there, it's pretty intuitive. They can follow along.
Mm, so awesome. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Joe, so much. I appreciate it.
I've worked with a number of people that have started directory sites or done other things outside of their counseling world. I love talking to people like Paul, where, to have an idea to say, I see this problem in the world and I'm going to do something about it. I'm not just going to complain about out-of-network benefits. I'm not going to just complain about how hard it is to be in private practice, or how there's all these sliding fee things and I can't make any money off of it, or whatever the thing is. That I'm actually taking action and I'm going to try to build something that can make a dent in the problem. Is Paul going to cure this societal problem? No, but he and his platform and his team are making a dent in it. And so I want to just remind you to go over to openpathcollective.org, sign up to be a therapist there. You get to choose how many sessions you want to do. Also, don't forget to refer people if you're full, or whenever you're out and about in your community, to let wherever you have influence, those people know that there is a great platform out there that you could be connected with or connect clients from your community into. We have tons of things going on at the beginning of this year, things that you're going to want to head on over to practiceofthepractice.com, where we have a lot of those just events coming up, blogs, podcasts. We're doing a lot of content this year, and would love for you to join us wherever it makes sense for you. We couldn't do this show without our sponsors today. Alma is our sponsor. If you want to join an insurance program, get credentialed within 45 days, and access those enhanced reimbursement rates with major payers, Alma is the place for you. You can learn more about building a thriving practice with Alma over at helloalma.com/Joe. Again, that's helloalma.com/Joe to get started. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have an amazing day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.